How's it going, everybody? So I'm just sitting here sipping on some tonic herbs, sipping on some tonic herbs, and figured I'd make a video responding to one of my subscribers' questions. This is actually someone who subscribes to me on YouTube and follows me on Instagram. And they sent me a DM asking me how to deal with anxiety, essentially, or how did I overcome my 2, almost 3 years of chronic anxiety attacks, right? So a lot of people who know me these days probably would never guess that I've ever dealt with anxiety or panic attacks or whatever. Mostly because I'm so free-flowing and just effective in general, and I just look like I legitimately don't care, right? And I legitimately whatever. I'm just like a tank. I'm like a tank that just like smashes through life or whatever. I don't know. And so the reality is, from 2012 to almost 2015, I had dealt with extreme like panic attacks. And when it first started, I was going in and out of panic, in and out of anxiety attacks or whatever. It was, I don't know if it is like more like anxiety attacks. It's the same mechanism, right? Just hyperventilation out of control until like my freaking life was like flashing back and forth before my eyes, and I just like black out. It was crazy, man. I remember just calling the ambulance like pretty much every fucking night, only for them they'll hook me up to the damn whatever it is, but to check my blood pressure or my heart rate or whatever it is, and then be like, oh no, well, you're not having a heart attack, man. Chill the fuck out. Like, you're just having an anxiety attack, bro. You're fine. And I remember after a while, they'd be like, hey man, you gotta stop calling us over here, man. You're fine, okay? You gotta stop calling EMS just whenever you have an anxiety attack. And I remember, going to emergency room middle of the night. like sometimes with my friends would be over and I'd force them to go to drive me to the emergency room and shit. And man, that shit was bad, man. That shit was bad, right? So I dealt with anxiety attacks, right? And the thing is, I think throughout my life I had dealt with periods of anxiety, and I just didn't know that it was anxiety. I didn't label it, right? It wasn't until I started to kind of like, when it would come on, I would assume that it was a heart attack or like some crazy shit like that it would spiral out of control. I think that people who label themselves or label their anxiety, their periods of anxiety, as as if it's a condition or an illness or something, I think they're doing themselves a disservice. It is absolutely a normal phenomena that people experience every day of their life. Sometimes in certain periods or certain situations, anxiety can kind of spiral out of control for everybody. And just because you have anxiety attacks or whatever does not mean that you're mentally ill. And I think in our modern times, where we catastrophize, God damn it. we catastrophize everything, right? And the mainstream medical system will happily get you hooked on anti-anxiety medications and shit like that for the rest of your life, and persuade you to think that you need them, that you need to rely on these anti-anxiety drugs because you have a genetic chemical imbalance in your brain that's causing anxiety disorder or whatever. When I was a kid, I was like 9 years old, they diagnosed me with ADHD, bipolar disorder, and all that shit. And, I remember, because just my childhood, there were some situations, let's just say, that was causing me emotional turmoil, and really everyone else involved too. It wasn't just me, but I think I took the hit the most because certain individuals would take their anger and crap out on me, right? And then I'd act out in school. And so from the age of 9 to 12, I was in mental hospitals. A lot of people don't know that. And again, people these days, because of how great I've been doing for the last like 10 years of my life, would have no idea that this ever happened to me. Because people assume, oh, if you're mentally ill, you're that way for your whole life. Because they're like, oh, it's just a mental illness. There's something wrong with your brain. You know, you're broken and need fixing, right? And, you know, that's simply not the case. If I didn't tell people that I suffered from these things when I was younger, right? If I didn't tell people that I had periods in my life where I struggled with these things, people would have no fucking clue. And when I tell people, they're like, they can't believe it. Because you see me, you know, hang out with me, whatever, even, you know, and you're like you think that this guy just has everything figured out, is what people assume. And I think I do. I am one of the very few people who has had these situations and then figured out how to fix them and come out on the other side, and I'm all badass now, right? Because I found practical solutions and to solve them, because I was tired of fucking suffering, man. But a lot of people, they just dwell in their suffering. So anyway, back to the topic, right? So people would have no fucking clue if I didn't tell them, because of how healthy I am these days, mentally, physically, emotionally. You know, and some people wonder why I'm so happy all the time, why I'm so enthusiastic. Well, this is a big reason why. Okay, it's because I've consciously developed strategies and ways in which I can always be enthusiastic and happy. But yeah, when I was young, 9 to 12 years old, I was in and out of mental hospitals. Okay, and they claimed it was bipolar disorder and this and that. And the reality is, lots of stress and crazy shit going on in my childhood environment that was causing me to act out in school. And I acted out pretty badly, I will admit. I don't want to say some of the shit that I did in school, but let's just say I was an absolute menace. I remember I remember one day, I was bored as fuck and I had all this energy in me. That's the other thing, is I'm a super high energy individual. I remember one day, I don't remember what class it was. It was either math or it was like art. I think I was in the 4th grade. I remember I was bored as fuck of that class. It was so boring. And I just had all this energy. I'm like, I gotta go and do some crazy shit, right? So I remember running, just bolting out of classroom. And I always have, all my life, have gotten a kick out of like seeing regular average society, who are all slaves and sheep, freak out at somebody who's just doing some crazy shit, right? I always love just seeing people's reactions to shit, which isn't a good kind of way to get your amusement, by the way, but it is what it is. I like bolted out of the classroom in 4th grade. Everyone was freaking like, oh my God, that crazy Wolfgang boy, right? And my teacher like called I don't even know if it was the principal or the cops or whatever. And I like bolted out of the classroom and I ran into the bathroom, and at the time I had like kind of short or medium. I had like medium. Actually, yeah, I had like medium blonde hair, and yeah, I was blonde back in the day. Everyone, I'm not a ginger. Okay, just my beard and other parts of my body have like red hair. You know what I mean? And blonde hair too, right? That's why it looks like I don't have any hair on my arms, because I'm blonde, but I'm pretty hairy. I'm like a goddamn albino gorilla. You know, and some people have said some girls actually have claimed I'm like an albino gorilla, which I would definitely not disagree with. But god damn it, motherfuckers. Anyway, back on subject. I used to have blonde hair, yeah, and so I ran into the fucking bathroom right in 4th grade, and I freaking got some water and I just spiked my hair up all badass. Because at the time I was like really into Dragon Ball Z. It was on like Toonami or whatever, and I go to my grandma's house and just watch it after school, right? So I was like, yeah, I'm a Super Saiyan. I like spiked my hair up, and I like ran all over the freaking hallways or whatever, right? And I would just like I just like run into different classrooms and stuff, and say hi to the cute Mexican girls I had crushes on and shit. I don't know, man. I would say, looking back on it, yeah, that's pretty crazy, I guess, like compared to the average society, obviously. I would never do that shit now. Like, for show. Fuck that. But yeah, that was kind of like me when I was like really young. I just always had a shit ton of fucking energy, man. I was a motherfucker climbing trees, giving my grandma a heart attack because I'm like all the way at the top of her like 100-year-old oak tree. I had a lot of energy. I always have, you know. But, most society doesn't have those energies, so they wouldn't understand. So anyway, yeah, so just being, that erratic behavior, I guess, combined with just like a lot of pent-up anger and other things from my childhood environment, let's just say, being taken out on me, at behind the scenes, I guess, and no real outlet to kind of like express those pent-up emotions. Okay, caused me to get angry at people at school and do crazy shit at school. So obviously they saw that as a serious issue, sent me to the mental hospital. Time I was like 9 years old to 12. Like, is that really a good kind of time to diagnose somebody with like a doomsday kind of diagnosis, right? Anyway, there was like, I don't want to say specific things, but yeah, there was some very clear issues in the household that kind of contributed to that. And then the school environment is just not conducive to like developing practical kind of like skills, especially with someone that much energy. And getting tested for my IQ. I'm also technically a genius, 149 IQ in the second grade. People keep telling me, it doesn't matter if it's in second grade, whatever. 149 IQ in the second grade. So, naturally genius person, right? 149 IQ. That's the top 0.1% of all intelligence of society, combined with just having so much energy that I'm just like crazy motherfucker, just like running all over the place and shit. Where was I going with that? Yeah. So after I was like 12 years old or whatever, the last visit at the mental hospital, I think I stayed there for like 3 months straight or something. And it felt like prison. It was crazy. Basically I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I'm going to stop doing the behaviors that these people, these adults deem as crazy. And crazy enough, never went back to mental hospital after I just chose to like stop, right? But a lot of the kind of mental anguish and stuff was still there for many years because I still had to deal with the those kind of environmental factors, right? Those people that I was forced to be around that just were not good, not conducive for mental health, right? It was terrible. But then finally, when I didn't have them anymore, I could go on that journey of healing, right? So anyway, big thing here is, recognizing certain behaviors and things and then kind of like transmuting that and doing something productive about it. Taking ownership of your issue and being proactive about it. When all these doctors told me like, oh, you have bipolar disorder, right? It's a chemical imbalance that you're going to have for the rest of your life, and you're never going to have a normal career, never normal relationship, never going to be able to live by yourself. When I was a child, I wasn't even 12 years old yet, and they were already trying to freaking nocebo me, telling me I'm never going to be able to live a normal life, right? And just so happens that all the things that my doctor had said I'd never be able to do, I've actually done all of those things and maintained that for 10 years already. So, and when I saw a therapist as an adult, he told me it's because I had a 149 IQ, lots of childhood kind of shit going on in the background, and lots of energy. And I'm outside the box and don't care about what society thinks. And so that was a perfect storm for that kind of shit. But he's like, nah, man, you're cool. You just need to find a passion and dedicate yourself to it. And guess what? That motherfucker was right. So big thing is you need to not look at your anxiety disorder or mental illness or whatever it is and identify with it. You need to not assume that you were broken. You need to not allow the mainstream medical establishment to create a self-fulfilling prophecy, okay? A big problem a lot of people have when they have something like anxiety or depression or whatever is that they allow themselves to identify with it. And they're like, well, I am just anxious, or I am just depressed, or I am just whatever it is, bipolar. And it is a biological issue. My grandma had it. My freaking uncle had it. Like, yeah, they all have diabetes too, heart disease, whatever else. And that doesn't mean that you are doomed for it. It just means that the majority of humans are fucked up. We eat junk, we eat shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, diabetes, mental illness, heart issues, they were hardly as common and prevalent before the introduction of refined foods and all of these crazy things in our modern society that are fucking people's heads up. They weren't even existent back in the day. And there's books that you can read that document this. Nutrition and Physical Degeneration by Weston Price. These issues weren't common until all these foods came into the food supply. And so now it's very easy to look at your grandma, your uncles, and all these things who have whatever, the mental illness or the physical illness that you think is genetic. And you're like, oh, look, all my freaking family has it, therefore it's a genetic hereditary disease. And look, there's a gene that backs it up, blah, blah, blah. It's like none of that shit is actually relevant to whether you can live a good life or not, right? And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you can overcome it, right? So anyway, you need to stop identifying with your anxiety, and you need to be proactive about it. So to the person who messaged me, right? So anyway, in 2012 to 2015, when I had these anxiety attacks, I knew that I can overcome it. I just didn't know it was causing it. So I started to Google search all of these different things. I was looking at Dr. Google. I'm like, what can it be, right? I convinced myself that it could have been heart disease, it could have been a lung disease, all this shit. And guess what? It just made it worse. The more I focused on fixing my anxiety, the worse it got. Ultimately, this went on for years until late 2014. I started trying out different herbal teas to try to calm my anxiety. So this is very interesting. I remember buying a holy basil and chamomile tea. And I was I felt a panic attack going on one day. I'm like, oh, fuck, here it comes. I'm like, all right, gonna brew up the tea or whatever. And I felt it, the anxiety rising. I'm like, I'm starting to hyperventilate. Here it comes. But suddenly I sort of feel a little excited. I'm like, oh, because I had started my YouTube channel already. And I was getting ready. I was going to make a video to document the effects of the holy basil and chamomile tea on my anxiety. And what I started to notice is the more excited I was to try out this experiment with the chamomile holy basil tea, the less and less anxiety I felt. And what I started to notice is the nature of being excited for the panic attack actually completely resolved and dissolved the anxiety altogether. And by the time the tea was done, the panic attack was pretty much completely gone. And so I was like, well, this kind of sucks. Where'd the anxiety go? I was all disappointed all of a sudden. And so before, panic attacks were something I was very scared of. And the more that I kind of would, resist the panic attacks, the bigger and bigger they got until they spiraled out of control. And so, from that point on, every time I started to get a panic attack, I would see it as an opportunity to experiment with the herbal tea or whatever, right? And I bought holy basil capsules at a certain point. And it wasn't even the holy basil, because I wouldn't even take it yet and the anxiety would go away. It was the the acceptance of the panic, and actually, instead of resisting the panic attacks, suddenly I was excited for them. I was anticipating them. I was wanting the anxiety attacks to happen. And so so the fight or flight response, this is how it goes. It's like you detect a threat. You identify something as a threat, right? In this case, it was the panic attack. It was like, I feel my breath getting a little wonky. Here comes a panic, and the panic attack is a threat. It's something I'm trying to fight off. And either you can fight it, you're like, I got to stop the panic attack, which you really can't, because the panic attack is driving the fight response. So it's like a loop that spirals out of control. And for me, that was what was happening, right? And a lot of people, after they have their first panic attack, it's not so much what caused it originally, but it's the trying to fight the panic that is spiraling out of control. And so, fighting panic attack. And so, you can fight it, or you can run away from it. That's the flight thing. Unfortunately, a panic attack is not a saber-toothed tiger, so you can't run away from it. But your body starts to kind of like raise the heart rate, and your adrenaline starts pumping to help you fight something, to help you fight the threat. But in this case, it's internal, and you can't fight it, you can't run away from it. So the response just goes out of control. So the key is to neutralize the threat. You have to transmute that into excitement, because like anxiety and excitement are the same thing. It's just excitement's positive, and the threat is, the anxiety is like a negative form. Another thing you can just do is just like see it as not threatening anymore. If you start to see a panic attack as something you're looking forward to, like in this case, I was like, instead of seeing the panic attack as like, I'm gonna die, I need to call the freaking emergency room, see the panic attack is like as an experiment suddenly that for me to document on my YouTube channel. That alone, just changing how I viewed the panic attack, completely removed it. And make no mistake, I still feel the beginnings of it after this, but just when it would come on, I was happy. I was like, I've been waiting all day for this panic attack. It suddenly was a highlight of my day, right? Because I'm going to make a video about it, right? And help other people. And the panic attacks just go away. And what's interesting is when I started to understand, when I dissolved the panic attacks, and I started to understand how the fight or flight response is created, it helped me understand all other forms of anxiety that I would have. Because panic attacks or anxiety attacks are like the worst, right? And really, people be like, panic attack is different from an anxiety attack. Well, look, panic attack and anxiety attack might have different triggers and things. Maybe they might feel a little different in certain contexts. But the fact is, hyperventilating out of control to where you fucking pass out, okay? And your heart feels like it's going to explode out of your chest, okay? No matter what you call it, that it's the same phenomena. Adrenaline, hyperventilation, then you pass out, and it's resisting the fight or flight response. That's all that it fucking is. So anyway, 2.5 years of dealing with that shit, and it just ruined a lot of my freaking, I don't know if I'd say it ruined my social things, you know what I mean? I had all these friends and shit still, but it made living a bitch, especially the first year or so, the first year and a half, because man, I would freak out. I'd be on the bus with a bunch of friends, or like my girlfriend at the time or whatever, and it would start happening. And, my girlfriend at the time would be freaking out. Like, she'd be like really worried about me and shit. I didn't know what the fuck it was, you know what I mean? But yeah, crazy thing is, if you learn to embrace it and you go with it, you go with the resistance instead of against it, it just goes away. So After I had that experience, okay, and I did start to take tonic herbs more regularly too, which was a great thing. A lot of people, man, if you eat a diet that is grounding and that is meant for the human condition, right? At the time I was getting into veganism and shit, right? But in my opinion, meat, fruit, tonic herbs, maybe some non-starchy vegetables, and maybe some sushi and white rice every now and then. I mean, not that I don't eat that anymore, you know what I mean? But that's the general pattern I've been eating for years now. That's been great. A lot of especially your physical problems go away. You'll find it's effortless to maintain like a lean body type. But like your mentality, your mind is just so awesome and clear, and your energy is just consistent all the time. It's just a 9-day difference. So a lot of times nutrition takes care of a lot of your just general lethargy and malaise, for sure. You just feel better, for sure. But most people, they eat a bunch of salads and stupid shit, and that's not good. But if you eat a meat-based diet with some fruits and tonic herbs and maybe some sushi here and there and whatever, you'll feel amazing. But tonic herbs, man, holy basil, ginseng, it's helped me kind of just like be grounded enough to kind of like when I would experience any kind of anxiety or anger or, and me, like, it's funny, like, I've been in personal training and health consulting and things like that where I have to deal with other people and help other people with their problems. And, there's personality types that can sometimes be less than pleasant, being able to deal with those things. I've heard some people say that the field that I'm in can be the most demanding. It's one of the most demanding fields you can be in because you're always physically active, but also mentally and emotionally active. And you really start to care for other people's well-being. And their results are like partially your responsibility now. That can be demanding for a lot of people, especially if you have anxiety issues and stuff like that. But for me, my own kind of journey of like when I was a child dealing with what they called mental illness and being in mental hospitals, and then seeing that process of self-development and self-improvement I had to go from being someone with extreme kind of family issues when I was a child, and then the doctor telling me I'm going to be like mentally disabled for my whole life and not be able to live a normal life and not have friends and shit. Like, the fuck, boy? Why would you tell someone that, right? And he was supposedly like the greatest psychiatrist in all of the United States and has all these awards and even wrote a book that included me in it, but he used an alias instead of my real name, which is crazy now. So when I told my therapist as an adult about this, he's like, bro, like, how the hell could your psychiatrist have gotten away with that? And actually, my therapist, one of his professors, was my psychiatrist, actually. And he's very fond of the psychiatrist. And he's like, oh, shit, that was your psychiatrist? Whoa. He's like the greatest there is, and people in my field worship him. Like, yeah, well, that motherfucker almost like noceboed me. But luckily, I didn't believe the shit they told me, and I was able to come out of it. But nonetheless, the process of going from the rock bottom mental health when I was a kid, I guess, to where I am now, that is where a lot of the value comes at solving other life problems, but also helping other people deal with their own. But with the anxiety thing, the less you resist, the easier it becomes. Instead of focusing on your anxiety, instead of dwelling in the anxiety, you know what I mean? You need to start to focus on building ease, building allowance, and being okay with anxiety. It's okay. Like for me, especially because I get hyped up on coffee all the time and I'm slamming the ginseng, these things can be very stimulating. You know what I mean? And the first time I took the ginseng coffee, I took too much. And I remember going to school and I was in the classroom and my brain was going all over the place and I was getting really anxious. I'm like, oh, what are these people thinking? And I remember just breaking out in sweat all over in that classroom. So anyway, coffee and ginseng can actually induce anxiety. But where's I going with that? Building more ease, right? I still, like, everybody deals with anxiety these days, right? And for me, part of my job as a personal trainer is selling training packages. Obviously, I'm just trying to help people out with their goals and care for them. And my clients get amazing results, losing, some of them 5 to 10 pounds a week, right? If they really are down with like extreme kind of progress. And that's a fact, right? I have it documented, but so I'm here to help people, but a big part of it is like selling packages, and that can be anxiety inducing, right? You know, the biggest kind of anxiety inducer for a lot of people is the fear of rejection, right? Because they're very, when you're attached to an outcome, when you're like, oh, I hope this person buys this package, or I hope this girl, doesn't turn away when I try to kiss her, or whatever it might be. Or a competition, jiu-jitsu competition, right? Again, like people, when they compete against me, I've always had my opponent say, bro, you didn't look nervous at all. I was so nervous about to face you. You slapped yourself across the face before you stepped on the mat. You growled really loud, like a fucking hyena or a freaking giant white albino polar bear. You growled and had your teammate slap the fuck out of you, and I was so scared, but you didn't look scared. Yeah. People would not know. They would have no clue I've ever dealt with anxiety attacks or mental illness or whatever, right? But the reason why I am so, just on point all the time now is because I've legitimately found like those hardships I dealt with over time legitimately gave me direction towards building the bulletproof tank that I am these days. All right. Mentally, I guess. I don't know. So, that's the thing. Okay. Detach yourself from the identity of your illness. Don't identify with, don't be like, I am, bipolar. I am, whatever. And, I have this disorder and I am broken. Yeah, because that's just going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. And, and you're never going to be able to actually develop friendships and other relationships from a place of being a healthy person if you constantly identify as those things, because you start to see them through this. If you have a problem with another person, then you're like, oh, it's just my disorder acting up or whatever, right? You're never going to be able to overcome it that way. So you got to stop identifying with it. But most importantly, start to actively kind of like develop things. And at first, it's going to be really hard. You're going to have all this resistance and stuff like that. But the more that you kind of go with it and you embrace the chaos, like if you have some slip ups and some issues, you know what I mean? It's okay. But people are so like afraid of their anxiety attacks. They're so afraid of their depressive episodes. They're so afraid of, having problems with other people in public or some crazy shit like that, and the sooner you're just cool with the fact, like, bro, I'm human. I've had some crazy shit happen to me, in my lifetime. And I recognize, hey, actually, that's actually the norm. Most humans deal with anxiety. Most humans believe they're messed up. A lot of humans might be messed up beyond repair. You're actually more normal than you realize. You're more normal than me. For me these days, I'm like, man, I love life so much, and like all the other people are constantly complaining about their problems. Like, it's not normal to have perfect mental health. So, some people, man, they're like, I'm broken. Like, no, you're actually more common than you realize. Actually, feeling broken is actually the norm. But all of the shit that I share with on my YouTube channel, man, it's about rising above these issues. It's about rising above average society, and just being a freaking boss, man. Being awesome and feeling consistently awesome in your own skin. A lot of people don't believe that's possible, man. The sooner that you realize that you can do it, the sooner it'll happen, right? It has taken me a long fucking time to develop that shit, though. But I'd say when I really started to pursue these answers and rise above these issues, it was around, I think I turned 21. It was like 2012. And then I would say Yeah, 2018 is when I started to really start to see everything. Really, 2015 is when I discovered all my problems, but I allowed myself to like kind of experiment a little bit longer. I was like, oh, I found the answer: tonic herbs, a meat-based diet, and kind of just like going with the flow and being detached from the outcome. You know, I was like, oh, I found all that shit in 2015, but for me personally, in my own kind of like decision making process, I was like, I'm gonna experiment. So I was like doing all these weird philosophies from like different self improvement gurus, taking things way too seriously, blowing things out of proportion, and allowing myself to eat bread and these other inflammatory foods that weren't good for my health. So I did another 3 years of experimentation, and then eventually I came back to realize what was actually how you kind of like win at life and you win at physical and mental health is this path of flow, this path of kind of like embracing the chaos, going after what you want. And it's okay if shit hits the fan, okay? But people are so scared of things going wrong that they can't even create what's going right. So focus on what you want, okay? Not what you don't want, okay? Stop focusing on the anxiety. Stop focusing on the episodes of anger. Stop focusing on all the reasons why you think you can't do it. Start to focus on, what do I want? I want happiness. I want ease. What's the opposite of anxiety? Ease, okay? Ease or excitement, right? Or whatever. Or just like non-neutralness or whatever. I don't know. A lot of everything is just like chill the fuck out, and it's not a big deal. That's the kind of mentality you need to have. And at the same time, stop avoiding things that you're scared of, provided if you actually embark on these things, right? If you go towards these things that you're scared of, if you can think of tangible benefits, right, that they might provide, if you stop resisting it, they can give you all sorts of awesome kind of benefits. They'll make your life so much fucking better, make you a better person when you come on the other side. Your whole life, all these things that you want will kind of like be bolstered. But a lot of people, they sell for way less than they deserve because they assume they're broken. And so like, well, I might as well just settle for less, right? Look, man, you can get all sorts of awesome shit if you choose the route of rising above and transmuting above your mental and emotional issues, okay? And if you have a therapist, okay, and they're like having you go, work through, like extensively working through the past and all these things, and like 2 years have gone by and you're still kind of like dwelling in your problems, you should probably maybe find a therapist like the one I found when I turned 21, who started to make me realize it's not so much about the childhood trauma that contributed to me, being in and out of mental hospitals or whatever. It's more so the fact that I was so focused on all my problems that I didn't have room in my life to focus on the success I wanted to build. But it took me a while to even desire success because I was so fucking balls deep in my problems. I didn't even know what success and happiness and fulfillment felt like. But when I started to really start to get a taste of it, and I started to chase it, I started to build it. When you start to focus on building happiness, building success, and not letting your fears and anxieties get in the way, it's really amazing what can happen, because eventually you'll be like me, where you're on the other side, and you stay on the other side consistently, But the red pill part of this is realizing that it's starting to recognize that all of your other friends that you've had all your life and your family members, that they're all still stuck in the same cycles that you used to be stuck in. And you're like, whoa, why am I like the very few people in society that literally has nothing to complain about outside of some stupid minutia, like people driving crazy or something. Anyway, So, yeah, I don't know. Hopefully this shit helped. I don't like talking about this crap because like all the shit that I dealt with as a child and all this other crazy shit is nothing like who I am now. And so I don't even feel comfortable. Like if I talk about it now, like it's like, for one, most people would never have a clue if they didn't know me. Or they'd never have a clue if they know me now, because I don't demonstrate any of those attributes that people would think would come from someone who dealt with that crazy shit. My childhood, like so-called mental health things, so worse than what a lot of people are like, oh, I have these mental illness issues and shit, and they've never been in the mental hospital. They've never been strapped up in a freaking one of those damn like restrained jackets or whatever and put in a padded room, and you just like like freaking continue, you just like try to throw yourself against the wall thinking that they're gonna like let you out, until eventually like, oh, I'm trapped in here, I'm just gonna chill. But yeah, again, I was like really young when that happened, and it was dumb. Well, I don't know if I was dumb. I just didn't know how to deal with the things that were transpiring. I didn't know how to deal with the childhood trauma, right? But when you finally realize how to deal with all that shit, it's easy. But yeah, honestly, I think a lot of modern counseling and modern therapy techniques are not going to help people. The shit that I had to do to like get better, a lot of it just has to do with recognizing you're not that person. You don't have to be that person, and what happened to you in the past, it's in the past. And it's more so it's the emotions that are left over, and it's the assumptions, it's the identifying with the old you. You know, and doctors make it worse by making you think you're broken, right? And telling you that it's a genetic thing that you're doomed with for the rest of your life. And so creating new beliefs about yourself is where it's at. But when all your family members and your friends think that you're broken, when your life is a reflection of someone who is broken, you know, you have very little evidence to kind of like back up the assumption that you're healthy. So you got to start to hang out with positive influences, man. You got to surround yourself with people who believe in your potential. And that's really hard for a lot of people, because they're so trapped in their problems, they don't even believe that they can, you know, that they can have friends like that. So anyway, yeah. I don't know. Hopefully this has helped some people. I'll talk to y'all next time.